Hello and welcome to another episode of Armored Warfare with Czar Peppers. Today we're going to take a look at the Chinese WZ-1224 that was recently added to the game with the rest of the Chinese tank line. Information on this vehicle was rather hard to come by, but there is a few bits and pieces that I was able to put together. Before we get into the thick of it though, I thought I should mention that with moving over the course of the next month, I'm not sure how regularly I'm going to be able to make videos. I'm going to try and stick with my video every other day schedule, but I may not be able to some weeks. But soon enough, this move will finally be over. I know I've been talking about it forever and it's been delayed and everything, but enough of that. Let's get to the tank. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, the People's Liberation Army primarily used armor either made by the Soviets and sent to China, or licensed and eventually unlicensed tanks were produced by the Chinese themselves. In the 1970s, when relations began to sour between the two bureaucratic collectivist states like a lemon that ate a bunch of pixie sticks, the Chinese began to explore the idea of producing their own tank. Likely another influence was that if a country has to buy their equipment from another country, they won't have equipment that is superior to that fielded by the country they're buying from. And with the Sino-Soviet alliance in turmoil, I'm sure that was something on their mind. The Chinese decided to take two approaches to upgrading their armor. One was to upgrade current designs, correcting flaws that the Chinese tank designers had found in their current tanks, like the aging Type 59, and two was to create their own design, and the WZ-1224 was one of those original designs. This tank incorporated both Western and Soviet design elements. The suspension was heavily based on that used by the various American patent line of tanks, and they had managed to get their hands on a number of them during the Vietnam War. It used a licensed German Maybach engine that produced 950 horsepower, giving it a top speed of 65 kilometers per hour on pavement. On top of that, it used a new Chinese-designed 120mm smoothbore gun that was made using Western components that they managed to get through Israel. So I suppose one could liken it to one of those iPhone clones you can buy off eBay, except it probably worked a lot better. They had also learned much about Soviet designs over their years of using and producing them. One Soviet characteristic of the tank was its rather low silhouette and slightly smaller design. An auto-loading system for the gun that was also attempted, but they were unable to get it to work properly, so the gunner was required to load as well. The tank's fire control system did incorporate a ballistics computer and infrared sights along with a stabilizer. So like many other Chinese designs, it unashamedly incorporates design elements from a number of different sources. But I'm not trying to mock or say that's a bad thing or an unhonorable thing to do. It is actually pretty clever, and when using a number of these elements in their design, they come up with something that is unique to the product that they've created. Instead of using a cast turret like many other tanks from the period, it used a welded turret that is heavily sloped from the frontal arc, but the turret proved to be costly and complicated to produce. Some later models, like the WZ-1226, had a much simpler cast turret that was similar to previous Soviet-influenced designs. Other models were said to also use some kind of composite armor on the turret. In-game, I found that this tank has front armor that is extremely capable of bouncing incoming fire from even many main battle tank guns. This combined with a fairly effective gun and decent mobility make it a pretty enjoyable tank to use. But it does have an Achilles heel, and that would be probably the worst gun depression of any vehicle in armored warfare. But if you can work around that flaw, you have a pretty capable machine. I've myself become quite fond of it. It's a tank that can sure take quite a beating. Back in real life, testing of the WZ-1224 found many flaws with the design. The auto-loading system was never sorted out, compromising the effectiveness of the gunner who was required to load and operated the 120mm gun by himself. They found that both the welded and simpler cast turret were flawed, and the gun did not perform to expectations. Some say that the tank was never really meant for production, but rather more of an experiment undertaken by Chinese tank designers. There were 2 prototypes made that were tested in 1981, and the results of those tests convinced the Chinese military that the tank design should be ditched, so the program was completely cancelled. So, on that note, I think it's time to end. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And if you know anything else about this rather interesting design, feel free to post it down in the comments. If you are one of those who are subscribed to the channel, or maybe are about to subscribe, you can also check out my Twitter in the description below or in my channel's information if you want to know about upcoming videos and when they'll be posted and stuff like that. So, until next time.
Identify target.
Hostile tank.